Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another What's Next meeting. Today we are joined with Mr. Gene Desvernine. And Mr. Desvernine is quite the unique guest in that he was born in Havana, Cuba. So we're really excited to hear his story today. He moved to the USA by himself after Cuba's government was overthrown in 1960. Mr. Desvernine worked his way from virtually nothing in the United States to junior college, then from junior college to Duke University, which is obviously a very prestigious university. From his bachelor's degree at Duke all the way to his Juris Doctor at the University of Richmond. He then, after his education, went on to work for the Proctor and Gamble Company in their legal division before accepting a job at Reynolds Metals in 1980. At Reynolds, he climbed the ladder all the way to Executive Vice President International, in which he managed all Latin American affairs for the multinational company. Mr. Desvernine is presently a member of the International Hospital for Children, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to linking pediatric services to children in the Caribbean and Central America, which I'm sure is a passion of his that we will dive into as the meeting progresses. So, Mr. Desvernine, thank you so much for joining us. We are so grateful to have you. And to all those watching this in the future, I hope you enjoy. Mr. Desvernine, welcome. We're glad to have you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. Great to talk to you, and I've gotten all your questions here, so I think I'm pretty well prepared as far as in my mind is concerned.
Perfect.
But you go ahead.
So I guess we'll just kick it off with the first question. Can you tell us just a little bit about your life growing up in Cuba, maybe your interests as a child and as a young man in high school?
All right. Let me just start by telling you that I'm 79 years old. And this is a long time ago because I left Cuba in 1960 when I was 19 years old. But my life in Cuba, as far as I was concerned, was ideal. I went to a private all-male school that goes from the first grade to the 12th grade, and happened that my father had gone to the same school, my grandfather had gone to the same school, and a lot of members of my family, uncles I've gone to. It was a Catholic Spanish French school, and it's called La Salle Academy. It was a wonderful place. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I've got, still have many friends that we left together and continue to be friends to this day at this late stage of our lives. But my social life was more around the club we belonged to. We all belonged to the same club, which was called the Havana Yacht Club. And I lived basically right by the ocean, and a lot of the activities that we were involved with had to do with maritime activities, whether we were sailing. I was in the rowing crew, although we played some of the more organized sports at school, whether it was baseball. I played a little basketball. I was always too short to be anything, so, but I enjoyed it. And my life was just, I mean, I have no complaints, never had a inkling in my life, never had a desire to leave Cuba. Never thought I was going to leave and then go back. That's where my family lived. My great-grandparents were there. I mean, the whole lineage of my family were there. So I felt very secure, very happy with a potential for a nice future. I've always wanted to be a lawyer. My father was a lawyer. My grandfather was a lawyer also, and I thought probably I would just follow in the same footsteps as I did and join the firm. And so it was sort of like mapped without having any major problems, and that I was undecided. I just knew and never thought about having indecisions as to what is it that I wanted to do. The big change came when we left, and you were asking me here, what made you decide that? Well, the decision was not mine. The decision was in part my father's, and also the events that were happening in Cuba at the time. Fidel Castro, by the way, I'm sure that you studied about him, and he's already gone, but he at one time was the longest living dictator in the world. And he was a revolution going in Cuba because the present government of Cuba had taken over in a coup d'etat, and a lot of the people were unhappy about that fact, that they were sort of proud of their, turn that off. This is Cubans calling me, 1 second. Te llamo en 5 minutos. En 5 minutos te llamo. That's one of my classmates. You know.
That's
They're
so
always
ironic. Just talking about it.
They're just there. They call all the time. Good buddies. And so Castro came into power. Batista left January 1st, and there was a vacuum, a total vacuum in Cuba as to power, police, order. I mean, there was nothing. It was just sort of didn't know people were standing. After he took over, he kept insisting that Cuba was going to go back to a democratic nation with constitutional elections and just to be calm. And people sort of felt very good about that, but things started to happen. That wonderful school that I told you about, which was a Catholic school,
yes, sir,
was taken over by the government because it was not, because it was private, and secondly, because it was Catholic or Christian. Then other things started to happen, which were not really in line in what we thought a free Cuba should have been. So as time went by, our concern was that we had seen a closeness between Cuba and Russia, and he started to talk about having a draft. Well, Cuba never had a draft because we never, a small nation, you don't have to go to the army. We're not going to fight anybody, but we had the United States 90 miles away to defend us against everybody. So, and I was right at the age where I could have been drafted. I had just graduated from high school, and and then Castro came out with an edict that said those people between the ages of 18 and 24
so that's right where
want to leave the country. Yeah, that's right where I was. They can leave right now. But they have to leave by themselves. And you have only 6 months to do this. Well, there was a real run to try to get a flight to get out to anywhere that first of all, you had to have some sort of a visa or something to come to the States. But if you didn't, you try to get in. Well, my father got me into a flight right away that left for New York. And all I had was basically a shirt, pants, 2 pesos, which is basically equivalent to $2 in my pocket. And that's about it. But we had an uncle that lived there, and we kept in touch, and that's why I went to his house. And he was very nice and very warm and very nice to me. But we left. There was about, flights coming every day, different places, where they went to Miami or New York or Chicago, different places in the U.S. I was lucky that to New York, a lot of my good friends from school in the Havana Yacht Club got there also. And we decided that the best thing for us to do was, in the meantime, to go and try to see what kind of jobs we can get, thinking that the revolution in Cuba was just one revolution. In other words, that's it. It's not going to take very long. So it did take long. And we all got different jobs. 19, what can you do? Your education is high school. Our English was questionable. And so we got jobs in I got a job at a company called Icelandic Seafood Corporation as basically a mail boy. So I went to the post office, came back, distributed the mail, ordered it, get the mail, take it back. Not a lot of intellect involved in that, but it was something that paid me, and it was enough. And then we decided to get together every Sunday, and the most best place to go was when we went to church on Sunday. So the only church we knew is New York was St. Patrick's. So
I'm sure that hit close to home as you were at a Catholic boys' school, and then you got to see your friends at church. It probably gave you some sense of normalcy as you were in a foreign country.
Oh yeah, yeah. We got to meet new people there, and we got to meet some of the priests. We got to meet. It was really, and every Sunday. Some of the people would take us out to lunch, invite us. I mean, even the people, not Cubans, Americans, which was kind of nice because they were interested in what was going on. And people were so kind. So we stayed in New York for some months, thinking that this thing was going to be over in a very short period of time. And when we saw our parents are still in Cuba, we had, we didn't have any money, we didn't have anything. And we thought that we better start looking to see where can we go to college. What are we going to do? I mean, and well, we didn't have any money to go to college. So we started, all of us, looking into possibilities of getting scholarships. And the only way to get scholarships was to research. And we all decided and divided our task to go to the New York Library, which is by far the best library in the world, and tried to look at all of the foundations that had as a mission something that, complied with what our goals were.
Right.
And we found a few, and we applied to over 100. We were rejected by a lot, but we found one, and they helped us a lot. And it was a Hungarian refugee fund. And what happened in 1956, the Hungarian Revolution against the Russians, the first revolution against a Marxist Iron country barrier was in Hungary, and the Russians invaded Hungary, and a lot of the Hungarians left, young Hungarians left. Many came to the US, but most of them stayed in Europe, to France, Italy, Germany. And so this foundation was started by some old Hungarians here, and that's where we got the reasons why we sort of applied. And they asked us, well, you're not Hungarian, so how can you qualify? And we gave them the whole spiel of,
it's similar.
Liberty, democracy, this is the same thing. They're just 90 miles away. They're Russians all over. And, we've left our country looking for something to be free and liberty. And we just gave them the whole thing. And it worked. It worked. So, and they called us back and they said, all right, well, the way we're going to work this thing out is that you're going to have to go to a school that we tell you to. You can't choose a school, of course. Secondly, you have to, well, first of all, you have to be accepted. Yeah, so you have to go through them. Secondly, you have to, you would tell you which ones to apply. And secondly, we will tell you which schools can you go to. And thirdly, this is a joint venture with SUNY, which is State University of New York. So it has to be a New York State school.
Okay.
The state gave us money for it. So I was chosen to go to a junior college, upstate New York, in Jamestown, New York, where I have never been so cold in my life. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, this is just
blizzards on blizzards.
Yeah, I'm a Caribbean kid. Here I am. I mean, snow coming out of my ears and all that. But and this was a starting junior college, which eventually it was the beginning of what is today community colleges.
Yes, sir.
This was an experimental kind of place.
So, if you don't mind me asking, Mr. Desvernine, before we continue to get into the junior college or community college, how, when you first got to the United States, did you not only continue to educate yourself at things like the New York Public Library, but also were you focused on any career fields? Did you still want to pursue like that law aspect that you did in Cuba, or had your thinking kind of evolved based on your new experiences in the U.S.?
Well, I always thought of law, and the reason, you have to realize one thing, that the law that we had in Cuba, which is the same thing of every Spanish-speaking country in the world, in parts of Europe, is different than the system that we have in the United States. The system in the United States is called a common law system. The system that we have in Cuba, and we have in many countries in Europe also, is called a Napoleonic code system, which is it's a different application of the law. There's only one place in the United States where you study that, and that's in Louisiana, because originally that was since it was French, and that's why they do it that way. So I was not sure, but I thought for sure that I wanted to go into some form of corporate life. I wanted to work for a big company.
I guess at this point you were also probably considering that you would be back in Cuba by the time it was time to become a lawyer, because it was still early in the revolution.
I did. I always thought for sure that I would go back to Cuba. I mean, there was no question in my mind that this was a temporary kind of thing. So, but in the meantime, I had to study because I was wasting my time. I mean, there's nothing young, and, we were all fairly energetic, and, what if in some way take advantage of the idle time and put it into use, and that was going to school. So I went to that school. My other friends went to different schools throughout the United States, and some of them were able to transfer later on to where their parents had come out and lived. A lot of them went back to Florida. I didn't go back to Florida. I didn't have anybody in Florida. So I ended up, I'll tell you, after my parents left. So I just thought that law was the best for me. But I didn't think of law as pre-law. I thought of what courses would advance me even if I went into something else.
Of
And I
course.
thought it was important to take some courses that I didn't want to be in accounting, but an accountant was an important course. It was interesting and it was different, and applications of where you put the zeros and that kind of thing is very important. What's a balance sheet? You read it. What's a profit and loss statement? You read it. You understand it. I mean, all these tools were very good, and they've been very good in my life. I also wanted to take some history courses because I thought that history would enhance my culture. I thought that history of any kind of history, whether it's American history, world history, or history of any other country, would enhance my ability to deal and to feel if I ever want to go international, I wanted to be, because I got to know a lot of the different cultures by it. And I thought history was very, very important. I also took some courses which I didn't think they're probably good courses, and I don't know if it had a lot to do with the teachers or not, but I didn't enjoy them as much, like economics. I had a tough time with it. And so I ended up at Jamestown Community College, or Jamestown Junior College. Best thing that I told you before was I had the opportunity to meet my present wife, my only wife, there. She was still in high school, and her parents, they were the head of Kiwanis or different clubs, and they kept inviting me over, and they wanted to find out more about what was going on in Cuba. Cuba was a very hot topic in those days. You had the Bay of Pigs happened during that time. The October crisis happened during that time. So it's very, very in the news all the time, and very, very, very well. So, and they kept inviting me to their house for dinner. They didn't know that I was, taking a look at his daughter, but but that worked out okay. And that's where we met. I was 20 years old. She was 17. She was still in high school. And but we continued with our lives, although kept in touch, right? So, sort of parallel, because we kept ourselves. She went to University of Kentucky. I ended up, at the later part of my career with Duke. And then from Duke, I went to the University of Richmond here to law school. But by the time I got to law school, we were married. I waited until she graduated, and then we got married.
That's wonderful.
With no money. And I said, well, if I did that before when I came from Cuba, I did it and I'm fine. Let's get married. Don't worry about it. It'll come somewhere. We'll work it out.
Yeah.
And
it did work out. Clearly.
Oh yeah. Everybody that we were, the other married couples, or the couples that we met, they were as broke as I were, and we were having a great time. I mean, so from that point of view, it was really pretty good.
That's great.
So law school was very different from my undergraduate studies, because law school is a different method of study, and you study the case method. It's just not the same as reading, a text or reading a history book. You're reading cases and you try to apply the case law to the particular facts that you have, and it's a different kind of logic in your mind how to apply it to it. I thought it was super interesting. But I from the beginning never wanted to go and practice in a law firm. I thought that I couldn't add a lot to a law firm. And in those days in Richmond, there were 3 or 4 big law firms. There still are here. Not much. There are a lot more than 3 or 4, but in those days, and you had to really be somebody from Richmond. They might decide somebody from Virginia more than anything else. And University of Virginia was like the big magnet of bringing all these people. So I thought my chances would not be good. Here's a kid from Cuba. Then what is he bringing to the picture? Right. So I thought that my assets were better accepted by a big multinational company, their legal department, somebody that was bilingual, bicultural.
And I know when we talked on the phone, you alluded to how being bicultural helped shape your career. So I cannot wait to touch on that later. I think that's such a unique part of your story. And being bilingual, what makes your story when you came to the U.S. even more impressive was English wasn't even your first language. You said your school was a French and Spanish school. So it was probably your third language at that point, I would assume.
Well, we had English lesson once a week, 1 hour.
So you got 1 hour of English a week, and then boom, in the blink of an eye, you're in the United States.
Yeah.
Before we get more into your law at U of R, I just wanted to ask you about Duke a little bit, because a lot of this club is designed to kind of help kids know what to study once they're in college, like undergraduate studies. So you managed to get into Duke, obviously one of the most prestigious universities in the country. What was kind of your motivation to go to Duke? And you mentioned how you got in from working hard in the junior and community college. But what was your motivation to go there? And while you attended Duke, what did you study upon and like hope to do upon graduating? Obviously, you went to U of R, but before that, what did you study and what was your motivation to go to Duke?
Well, two things. For one thing, Duke was my choice from the beginning. Even if Castro wouldn't come, I would have probably considered going to Duke. And the reason is my father went to Duke. My father attended Duke undergraduate from Cuba, and went to law school at Duke. And then, he had such a wonderful time. I mean, really a wonderful time at Duke. And he loved that. He was a great student, and he was very, very successful. And so I always wanted to sort of follow those footsteps. I mean, my father to me has always been, my father's of course passed away, but he's been sort of an image of what I've ever wanted to be. He was honest, straight, funny, loving, wonderful. And you talk about someone language, he could speak 5 languages fluently, bright. I mean, everything you can imagine about him, that's what he was. So that was my motivation to go there. And then I'll tell you a little side story about it, what I did when he got out of Cuba. Once I'm studying at Duke, I knew I wanted to go to law school, so I directed my studies into something that would help me, one, get into a law school, number two, something that would be helpful within law school, and thirdly, once I got into law school and graduated, something that I could think would be of help. And I'm saying three things, whether it's the history part of it, which is cultural, and it's very important. You got to have that culture, get to know it, get to understand it. Number two, a little bit of the business thing, like business law with our accounting. It's very important to have that feeling, because you might have clients that are involved in business. And if you're a lawyer, you're not out there in a courtroom defending a criminal. You're doing more than that. You're going to have corporate clients. You're going to have clients that make different aspects of what our commerce and society is, whether it's technology, computers, soaps, and detergents, like what I went to. And so all of that, even though I wasn't thinking about Proctor and Gamble, but I was thinking exactly, I wanted something that it would round me into going to law school. I chose University of Richmond primarily because of financial reasons. It was a burden. My father had just left Cuba, so we didn't have a lot of money to continue paying for a lot of these things besides some of the scholarships that I had. My father had left Cuba and had come to Richmond and was working. But he went before he went to Bermuda and then to Richmond, and he got a job with Reynolds. He actually became general counsel at Reynolds, and he was of tremendous help. But I said, but to a certain degree. So I wanted to get married. So we got married, and I went to school here. Linda got a job, and he was able to help me at the University of Richmond to pay for the tuition, and which was a lot less in those days than going to someplace else, Duke among them. But so, and I really enjoyed the University of Richmond. The University of Richmond has changed quite a bit from the original days until what it is today. But I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed and still have a lot of personal friends that went there when I was there. And some of them are members of the country club with me. We play golf. We still play golf together.
That's great.
Retired, old, but it's great. It's wonderful. It's
so,
wonderful.
My follow-up to that would kind of be, you seem to know, or like you did know and were educated about the university system prior to coming to the United States. You knew you wanted to go to Duke. Had you ever visited a college campus before you left Cuba? Had you ever been to the United States, or more specifically visited a college campus such as Duke's?
No, I had been to the U.S. before. Primarily, I've been to New York, because my mother was very ill, and the medical care in Cuba, of course, was not as good as here. So my father took my mother to for medical care in hospitals in New York. And then I had gone to Florida because Florida is 30 minutes away in a plane from Havana to Miami. And we would go there for an event or whether a football game or something. So I had been, but I had never visited a campus outside of the US. I visited schools in Cuba, all the universities, but I had never visited one in the US.
Okay.
Never.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just curious about that. You can continue. And just how
well, it's different because you're a student here, and that's part of the whole system. You have the opportunity to go choose the schools, the visiting schools. So even the physical aspects of the schools might be part of your decision-making process.
Yes, sir.
I mean, and maybe it shouldn't, but it is. It's part of it. Part of the and I think to me what's important about that is not only that, but also is just look at the kids if you visit a campus. That's to me the number one thing.
Just kind of the community aspect. I fully agree with that.
Well, what do they look like? Do they look happy? Are they friendly? Are they something that no one can tell you. You know it. Once you're there, you know it.
So I apologize for getting a bit sidetracked. I was just very curious about that. So once you choose the University of Richmond, you're studying and getting your Juris Doctor. How did that impact your life as a whole, just going forward, whether it was working with Proctor and Gamble, which we're going to touch on later, Reynolds Metals? How did that decision to attend the University of Richmond, aside from getting married, which is obviously a huge step in everyone's life, how did that change your life?
Well, the thing that has impacted my life the most since I came to the United States, all inclusive within these things that you talked about, is I always felt secure about myself. I never had any doubts. Never had any doubts about. I never had any doubts that I would get a job. I never had any doubts that I was going to be successful. I never questioned that. Not that I'm cocky about it, but I just felt so assured.
Well, confidence is key, so that's great.
Yeah, I'm still confident. I'm very confident. My attitude is just so positive about a lot of things, and I think that's been my life. And I felt that something would fall under if you follow certain steps. You got to, in some way, make sure that you're a hard worker, you study, you behave. A number that you follow through. Most people do. You do. I do, and it works. It works out perfect. So while I was in law school, I mean, like I said, I didn't have a dime, but we had a great life. Social life was wonderful. And I knew that I was going to get a job with a big company. I knew it. I mean, and when I graduated, all my friends were, getting jobs here with a couple of guys with McGuire Woods and then the other company, different law firms in town. And I think I applied to about maybe 8 companies or something like that. And I got 6 offers. And
Wow.
one of them was a company in Richmond, which was Universal Leaf. And in those days, the only reason I didn't go to Universal Leaf is because it didn't have a big international exposure. I mean, they were buying tobacco in Brazil, Central America, small. But I wanted something bigger than that.
And you wanted to be able to use your, bilingual and bicultural background to help benefit you in the long run. So that's completely understandable.
I did.
So after you acquired your doctor's degree, you then moved to New York, correct, and began work for the Proctor and Gamble Company in their legal division. So clearly your hard work at U of R paid off and you went to their legal division. What did your day-to-day look like with that firm?
Well, it was interesting because first of all, you got to study the different companies, and that's at one time when you're ready to go and get a job, you got to research that company, research it. Because there might be stuff in there that they do. There might be stuff that you don't want to do. There might be things that you don't understand. What impressed me the most about Procter and Gamble was what is their motivation mission, I call it, for an employee. And the first thing is to basically, I call it indoctrination, but it's a terrible word, to really for you to get to know what the company is all about. What is the philosophy of the company? What is the reason for the company? How do they go about? I mean, they're the fathers of marketing. So so you spend a good 6 months basically in training, going through different departments in the company, which was fabulous because you get to see how uh, the brand man works and the marketing, and you get to see how some of the manufacturing works, and you get to see some of the people in management work with inventory and take. I mean, all this thing after the other, and you really get involved in it. So then, after you go through all that, then they sort of choose you where you're going to go. I ended up for the second 6 months working in the day-to-day working in trademarks and copyrights. Never thought in my life I was going to be doing. I didn't, I mean, this is the craziest thing. It's called industrial property. That is registering and working with brands that you register in order for future products. So you have to be using them in the meantime in interstate commerce. But it was the most interesting thing. So fascinating. And then after doing that for 6-8 months, immediately they decided to start moving me more and more into the international, particularly Latin America. And that's when I really got acquainted with different managements and different types of companies that we had there, and working together with a lot of the facilities that they had throughout. And I was there 6 years, and then they sent me overseas. They sent me to Venezuela. In Venezuela, they had subsidiaries, manufacturing subsidiaries where they manufactured their 100%. There's soaps, detergents, sometimes disposable diapers, food products. I mean, they had everything you can imagine. And these were companies, for the size of the country or the economy, were contributing quite a bit to the economy by the number of employees they had and the number of sales and the taxes that they paid there. And so I ended up, after doing a lot of the local legal work with a local outside counsel, moved into a job that dealt with government relations, treasury, and audit. And then from there, I sort of worked in the other Latin American, but based in Caracas, the other subsidiaries doing the same thing, which was outside of the day-to-day legal type of thing.
Right. But still an important job nonetheless.
Oh, it was fantastic, very fantastic. And I eventually, I worked with them for 11 years, and I eventually left because Proctor's philosophy was, if you were what they call expats, if you're an expat or, overseas, you stayed overseas. They don't do that anymore. You stay overseas your whole career. Well, I wasn't sure that I wanted to do. I left Cuba and I wanted to come to the States. I didn't want to leave the States and not come back to the States.
Right, because you clearly had something going here.
Yes, and then, my two daughters were born in Cincinnati, and then they went down to Venezuela, and it was difficult. Not difficult, but it was different, and I just didn't like the lifestyle of, not having people there. I liked the legacy traditions, parents, grandparents, the cousins, the family. And that's why I came back to Richmond, where I had, my father was here. Then about that time, my aunt and uncle and cousin had left Cuba and come here. Once one of the patriarchs leaves Cuba, they all follow. So that's why I decided I wanted to come back to Richmond. And that's when I had the connections with Reynolds through my father. And that's when I came to work for Reynolds.
And before I go into my next question, I just want to emphasize something that you said at the very beginning of that response, which was, when you're researching a company or when you're about to take a job, really hone in on researching that company. I think that is so crucial because, like you said earlier, you had many offers from a variety of companies, but you knew you wanted to work at a multinational and you knew you wanted to have something to do with their Latin American business. And that's what Procter and Gamble gave you. But then you kind of reevaluated and potentially found Reynolds. I think that is something that's so crucial as you kind of grow and develop, is be thinking about, what do I want out of a job? Because it's not only what job wants me, it's what type of job do I want. And I think that's sometimes overlooked. It's like, do the research on the company. It's not all about the paycheck that you're getting. It's, while that's important, it's also, what do you love and what are your passions?
Well, what I wanted actually, it fit like a glove when I went to Reynolds because I had looked into Reynolds. I had looked into their businesses. I looked into their exposure in Latin America. I looked into their investments internationally. And I thought it was just perfect. I live in a place where it's great, which is Richmond. I'm traveling all around the world. They had a mess going in certain countries because of bad decisions and investments, joint ventures that were not working out, bad partners, government partners. So when I came, I really I got pretty close with the president, the chairman, and I told them basically about my philosophy that should have some sort of a, you know, clear international mission before you put a cent overseas of risk. And that is, don't try not to go as a joint venture with the government. Why? Then if you have to, what is it that you're looking out of them? What securities do you get if you're going to go with the government because they can take over and they're going to be always bigger than you? If you have a partner, why are you bringing a partner? Is the partner somebody that can help you with the business in that, there might be but somebody that has a business that you're going to be selling to, which is not good to have as a partner because you don't want to be in conflict. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that they had done. And when I requested, excuse me?
That kind of intrigued you to go there. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, they agree. And they let me do a lot of things, which was clean it up. I mean, I spent, I would say, a good many years at the beginning closing companies, getting rid of them, reinvesting, redoing the money that I was selling the companies and investing in something new, which they didn't have before.
And I think that is a perfect transition into my next question, which is obviously you joined Reynolds Metals in 1980 as assistant to the chairman of the board. And after numerous promotions, you became the executive vice president international and were responsible for all of Reynolds Latin American operations. What were your responsibilities? And like you were about to touch on, what type of projects did you carry out, whether it was right at the start when you were cleaning up or whether it was, like putting aluminum cans in this country? Can you just kind of walk us through what projects you
actually, after cleaning up, it was always with the idea that we were going to do something. It's not a question of just cleaning up and leaving. So we always thought that there was an opportunity in each one of the countries that we had bad investments, needed to be cleaned up, needed to get new partners or no partners, needed to make some fresh start into something that would give us not an immediate, would give us a long-term presence in the country, which would give the country something back and will give us a lot back. So a lot of the things that we invested in, at least under my tenure, was basically in packaging. I mean, I did a lot of packaging, which is aluminum cans, where they did not have aluminum cans. One of the, Brazil, and it's just one of the, in this hemisphere, is the second largest country and in the number 2 country in the world that drinks more beer than anybody else, except for the US. But so aluminum cans are perfect for it. Aluminum cans are a vehicle to package something that has longevity. The life of the product itself lasts longer in an aluminum can than in any other kind of packaging.
So you were the one that instituted that into Venezuela.
I did it in Venezuela. I did it in Brazil. I did it in Argentina. I did it in Peru, and I did it in Chile.
So I just want to take a second here so that everyone watching this can appreciate how important that is, that Mr. Desvernine, introduced the aluminum can and instituted it into these countries. I cannot imagine a life without aluminum cans. I use them daily for sodas and what have you, but I just think that is fascinating. What an important job too.
I had a lot of help in the fact that the U.S. they had done it here in this country, so I used a lot of the know-how of what they had done, and it's a two-piece kind of thing because it's the introduction, investment, and getting the client, the customer, to join you, and then on the other hand, you had recycling, which is great. So I introduced recycling, which is good for us because it lowers the cost, and it's great for the country. I mean, it's the
environment.
Environmentally friendly thing that you can do is have recycling. It's just wonderful. It creates jobs. It cleans the streets. It's you can reuse it. Aluminum sales like aluminum is a product that a larger percentage of the original can be used for the same purpose than any other product. So every aluminum can you see out there has got some old aluminum can in it too.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's been melted and remelted and all that. But it's a tremendous. And then so all during that time, I had to deal with governments, very close with governments, customers, which is local franchises of soft drinks, whether it's Coke, Pepsi, or the local soft drinks, and the huge big beer companies. Huge. The beer companies were huge and a force in the country. So it was a timely, and you had to be. It was good. It was very good. You had to be tough, and you had to be good, and you had to come to a situation where you just had the best product for the same price that we can make some money. We started the first aluminum can that we built in Venezuela. I think we made 5 million cans. I think that was.
Oh my gosh.
And I left when I retired. When I left, it was 12 billion cans. 12 billion. Billion.
Wow. That is something.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I cannot even.
And then now there are other companies. Now there are other companies making cans. They're bigger and all. But when I left, every can made in Latin America was basically Reynolds cans.
Wow, that is unique. And I think it goes without saying. This is again a perfect segue. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but your answers are so fluid into my next question. It goes without saying that being bicultural clearly helped you in a Latin American role at Reynolds Metals. To what extent did it help you? And can you just give like one or two examples of a specific situation when you being bicultural really kind of elevated your level of interest and your ability to thrive?
I don't know, if I can give you a specific examples, is that in order to, in a lot of these countries, to make an investment, it's not, they think that they're waiting for you as an American investor with their open arms. They're not. They're very careful. And secondly, in order to get the things done, if you can get yourself in a position of power within those who think that they can stop you, it's, when I thought, who's the person with the most power? It was the president of the country. Well, I need to meet the president of these countries. I need to meet somebody who is at that level. And then I will bring the chairman of the company to meet him and all that. I think I was able to do that kind of stuff only because of somebody in their group that would get me, the first interview. After we speak the same language. We have the same stories culturally about our lives. We come from the same sort of socioeconomic kind of background type thing. We can identify with it. It was very important, very important. And I think that was, to me, that was one advantage that I had at Reynolds and at that business to do this, to get this thing done. And I got to know very well that in those days, the president of Venezuela, I got to know the president of Argentina, I got to know the president of Chile. It was interesting. I even got to know the president of Paraguay. We didn't do any business, but that was an interesting story too.
I think that's such a testament too, that you talked about you being bicultural helping you get the first interview, but then it's a testament to kind of your hard work and your positive outlook on life that you continue to be successful with all of these presidents of countries. Like those are pretty high positions. I mean, I think it's safe to say that. So I think that's a testament to not only you being good at your job, but also you're willing to work hard.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
really, to me, I tell you, and I told you that before, I always thought my assets were bilingual by culture, but one of my greatest assets have been all through my career were the people that work for me. They were wonderful. And I was so grateful, so good. I chose them. They were out of this world, terrific, and they were a tremendous help. I mean, really good.
So what would you look for in an employee, since these guys you hired did such a good job? What did you look for when hiring?
Well, I was looking for bilingual people, really. I was looking for a lot of bilingual. And so what I did in every country that I've gone to, and I started something, I found people working for either somebody else or working for, one of the businesses that I was looking into buying, or and I would find young people. I was looking basically young MBA kind of thing, and I would hire them, but I would bring them to Richmond. Part of the thing that I wanted to do was they had to live and train here for at least a year, and because I wanted to see them how did they would behave in this environment
So it's a
outside of
lot
their
like what
country.
Proctor and Gamble did.
Exactly. That's what I did, and I brought and I've had the manager that the manager that I had in Brazil. I had him in Mexico first, then in Brazil. I brought here, and he lived here 2 years. 2 years he lived here, and then I told you about this boy from Costa Rica who went to the military academy and graduated from the military academy. Well, Costa Rica doesn't have an army, so he was looking for a job, and I thought he was perfect, and he stayed here and worked with me here. And I had a number of them. I mean, really great young guys, great analysts, engineers, industrial engineering. What else? I mean, good financial mind, quick, uh, very top-notch kids, very top-notch.
That's great. So for kids at St. Chris or anyone that ends up watching this video who are interested in working for a multinational company and potentially holding a managerial position, what courses in both high school and college would you recommend? You kind of touched on it at your time at Duke, whether it like mixing history with business, but is there anything you'd like to add to that? Just if people going into college now, I know I'm a year away. There's some guys in this club that are 2, 3, 4 years away, but just in high
Well,
school, college.
it's well, I think one thing that's very important, and I think you're excellent at it. It's communications is number one. You have to learn how to communicate very well.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's very important for you to learn in some way how to write. You have to master your English language. You have to compose with your grammar without making a mistake. Don't make mistakes in your show. It's a little easier today with the stuff that you got, but it shows that you're a little bit like a day school. You don't take it. You have to be really precise, and I think that's important. I think that communications, whether it's verbal or written. One thing that they taught us at Procter and Gamble is basically how to communicate by writing a memorandum, and a memorandum cannot be longer than 2.5 paragraphs. If you can't put your point across, it was a bad memorandum. And you go through it and what you do and what you try, put your point, and that's it. And don't be verbose. Just they were great. I mean, that school to me was like getting a PhD, I think, as far as business is concerned. And so, I mean, besides those courses that we talked about, I mean, those things are basically things that you learn in school and things that you learn at home and things that you learn in your social life. Communications is number one.
That's great. That's very good advice. And I think that is completely true with any job, really. You need to be able to communicate both via email and verbally, and just kind of make the person who you're talking to feel comfortable, I guess, is one of the main things.
Yes, that's right.
So now you're a member of the board of directors of the International Hospital for Children. This nonprofit organization, which I mentioned in the introduction, is dedicated to linking pediatric services to children from Central America and the Caribbean, which obviously you're familiar with. What has it meant to you to not only be a part of such an incredibly generous organization, but also give back to those countries, like around your homeland of Cuba?
Well, first of all, I'm no longer a director. I'm retired. I have followed through. Now it's called the World Pediatric Project. And my daughter, Sarah, actually took my job, took my board seat. And this is just not Central America. It's the Central America and the Caribbean, and particularly certain of the countries in the Caribbean, which we did a lot, which I introduced because they weren't doing anything in there. So I brought in the Dominican Republic. And I said, I'll volunteer, dedicate my time to establishing something in the Dominican Republic, because the way that these things worked is you bring doctors from the US and you go there and you do whatever you have to do, operate and all that. And I said, it would be a good way if we could sort of make a joint venture with one of these hospitals that we can train some of their doctors. We bring them over here, and then we could take our doctors there, and then we try to maximize treating the patient, the child, treating them in the local country. Bringing them back here was very expensive, and it is still expensive. When we started this thing, I think we were bringing maybe 10 patients a year. When I left, I think we were bringing maybe 1,500
Oh
a
my
year.
gosh. Per year?
And yeah, I mean,
Everywhere you go, Mr. Desvernine, it seems to just grow.
make grow, and so it was an interesting, and now we're trying to make it just the opposite. So we treat more overseas than we treat here. And what's important is to treat. What's interesting, we look at medicine in this country, and everybody is in some way a specialty. Well, one specialty, for instance, was very big, pediatrics. Well, everybody has a pediatric, There's no pediatricians. A doctor is a doctor. He treats geriatrics, who's an old guy, and he treats a baby coming in. I mean, saying one guy because, we're spoiled, but we're a rich country. We are rich in culture and rich in money, and we can afford to have all these different types of, aids, medical aids. And these countries are poor, very poor. And there's a guy that has to work 16 hours a day, and he'll do all of that. So I thought that would be great to try to train more and try to take him down there and try to, and that's one thing we started, and it was very good, very successful, very successful. I love that. I mean, I really enjoyed it. And the reason how I got to it, they asked me one day if I could go down to MCV because they were having a problem with a patient, couldn't speak a word of English. It's one of the families. So I went as a translator. One thing led to the other. So it was interesting. Very good.
So I always like to finish off these interviews with one kind of fun question. And, I've known you for a long time through my grandparents and the golf course. So I know in the past few years you've picked up golf as kind of your hobby. I want to know what your best round of all time was. And actually, before I started this recording for everyone that's watching this, can you shift your computer screen again to the flags? Yeah. So those are Mr. Desvernine's hole-in-one flags. I have played golf for now about 15 years, and I have never had one, and he has 5. So he is scorching me in that category. So what's your best round, Mr. Desvernine?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I'm not a very good golfer. I'm not a top-notch golfer. I mean, your grandmother's an incredible golfer. Both of your grandmothers are. But the best round that I've had, and the best 3 other guys that are my friends to be with. I'll never have my golf by my companions. Are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here, yes, sir.
Okay, so I belong to a golf group called the Shankers, and it's about 40 of us.
Wow.
And we're all about the same age, and it's really a wonderful bunch of guys, wonderful people. We're friends, we socialize, and to me, the best round of golf I could ever have is being with 3 of those guys.
That's great.
Together. They're great friends. Great friends.
I wish I had that outlook because, I'll go out with 3 of my best friends. We have a little group too, and I'll go out and play poorly and go home all grumpy. But it seems like you just enjoy being out there. So I have so much, being a golfer, I know how frustrating it can get. So I have so much respect for you that you can just go out there and enjoy the moment and be with your friends.
Oh, I enjoy, because we're all about the same. As you get older, the worst thing is to be a good golfer when you're very young, and then when you get old, you cannot be as good because you're old, because you can't hit the ball as long. They said, so you get frustrated. You shouldn't get frustrated. It's just part of the game, part of the thing, and you're playing with the same people. And I just love being, love being with people I like. It just fulfills me, believe me, fulfills me better than a good round of golf.
That's great. That's great. Well, that just about wraps up what I have for you, Mr. Desvernine. I cannot thank you enough for joining this Zoom. It was fascinating to hear about your experience in Cuba translated to your experience in the United States, and then college on to Proctor and Gamble, Reynolds Metals, and your work on the International Hospital for Children, and obviously your golf game. So I hope I will see you at the range soon.
Well, I wanted to close by telling you how proud I am of you, and proud I know your grandparents were my contemporaries, and I think what you're doing is exceptional. I think it's wonderful. I'm really I'm really impressed by it. And if you need any help, or you want to meet some other people, or you want to have the opportunity, I'll be more than happy to introduce you to some people. You know,
Thank you so much. That means the world to me.
Would you like to interview Mr. Reynolds?
Wow, that is quite the offer. I will send you a follow-up email on that for sure.
Okay, well, let me know if you want.
Will do. Mr. Desvernine, thank you so much. It's a pleasure as always.
All right, take care, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.